going into Game 6 with the Timberwolves going up against the Grizzlies, which team do you favor and why?
So it's tough for me, man. Every time I want to pick Minnesota, they go and they choke. Every time I want to go and pick Memphis, Minnesota actually comes out of nowhere and just kind of surprises the world. I've said it again. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm going to take Memphis to close this one out just because of the lack of an appearance of D'Angelo Russell. I don't know if Minnesota is going to look into this in the offseason, but the lack of consistency from him, the lack of dominance from him. I mean, for God's sakes, in all intents and purposes, aside from I think maybe one game where D'Angelo had 20 plus points, Patrick Beverly has outplayed D'Angelo Russell. Pat Bev is averaging, I believe, more points. I believe Pat Bev is doing more on the defensive end, which is what he was brought to Minnesota for. And when you have Patrick Beverly playing better than you, that's when you need to start being concerned. I mean, dude, it's getting to the point now where if you're just simply relying on Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns, it clearly isn't enough because they need to have another option, another third or a third hand in the pot to really go out there and kind of keep these leads alive and make sure that they don't get out of hand. Obviously, there's no answer for Ja Morant. There's no answer for Desmond Bain, although they're not shooting that well from the field. I'll get into that in just a second. Minnesota showed that they have the potential to be a better team. They just need that help, man. They need that third option because D'Angelo Russell scoring 12 points, 10 points, and 11 points in 3 out of the last 5 games is just embarrassing. Um, he was brought to Minnesota to be that second fiddle before Anthony Edwards was drafted, and it just has not played out due to injury and poor performance. So, once again, I'm just simply going to say that I think that Memphis capitalizes and they take over in game 6. Let's just look at this box score really quick. Ja leads the way with 30. Bain goes for 25. You have Blake Carter, is it Blake Carter or Brandon Carter? I always forget his name.
It's Brandon
Brandon
Clark.
Clark. Brandon Clark. I am just atrocious today. Brandon Clark goes out there and has another amazing game, playing 37 minutes. He goes for 15 rebounds, 21 points. Just an incredible spark off of the bench, shooting 9 of 14 from the field, beyond efficient, and obviously having an impact in the game as a unit. And then you go out there and you put Jaren Jackson Jr. with 12 points and his 5 rebounds. I believe he actually left the game with an injury because he only played 18 minutes.
He
Correct?
fouled out. He fouled out.
He fouled out in 18 minutes.
He only played 18 minutes, but he fouled out.
I got that completely wrong. I could have swore I didn't see a lot of this game. I just saw Jaren Jackson Jr. left with 18 minutes to go. I didn't know that because he fouled out. Regardless, despite his poor performance, obviously someone was able to step up, and that shows another reason why I believe Memphis is a better team. The next man up is just a normal occurrence for this team. I mean, who the hell is Brandon Clark? This guy came out of left field and he was able to just contribute to a big win. Ja Morant, obviously the MVP candidate for Memphis, was able to lead them to a game-winning buzzer beater. So Minnesota's got a lot of different holes poked in their repertoire right now. They just aren't getting it done enough for me, and I just think that Memphis is they're just poised, man. They're ready to go. I think they're a better team, and I think that they're going to capitalize and go on and win Game 6.
Well, when I look at this Game 6, to me, it's dependent on really two things. It depends on whether or not that the entire Grizzlies unit shows up, or it's Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns just show out and they just take that game over from Minnesota. For me, I'm more hesitant to pick the Timberwolves just because I don't think that Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns are going to go gangbusters in Game 6. So I'm picking just the overall unit that the Grizzlies have, and I'm taking Memphis in Game 6, and they'll advance to the second round. And here's why. So when I look at that Game 5 specifically, Kevin, to focus in on Brandon Clark for a second, I know that Ja Morant led the way with 30 points. Brandon Clark was probably the most pivotal player for Memphis in Game 5 single-handedly. There were multiple plays where he just took the game over, and not by scoring. That would be the result. It would be him getting rebounds, and not just defensive rebounds, but offensive rebounds on a consistent basis. There was a point in time where Memphis was kind of clawing their way back in Game 5, and despite the fact that they were down double digits late in the game, whenever Memphis missed a shot, Brandon Clark would be able to get these offensive rebounds and get these putbacks and be able to score and keep Memphis alive in these late game runs. And that's exactly what happened in game 5. So I know a lot of attention is focused on Ja Morant, and deservedly so. I mean, the guy was an MVP candidate for like 3 quarters of the year before he got hurt. But in game 5 specifically, man, Brandon Clark showed out. Not only that, I thought Desmond Bain was huge in that second half for them. He was knocking down some critical shots. And all in all, Memphis, they're still a relatively young team, but they were able to weather the storm from Minnesota very well in game 5 because it really looked like Minnesota had Memphis on the run because Minnesota held some pretty sizable leads throughout most of this game. And I was kind of flipping back and forth between the Grizzlies game and there were some other games going on at the same time. And it always seemed like Minnesota was always up 7, 8, 9 points, even 10 points at some points. And Memphis just couldn't be able to close it out. But that fourth quarter was the difference maker for Memphis once again. And I mean, when you look at the fourth quarter specifically in game 5, 37-24 in advantage of Memphis. It's just indicative of Memphis's grit. They're just resilient. And despite the fact that they're young, they don't know giving up. They just find ways to knock down shots, keep themselves in it, and give themselves a chance. And I think that's going to be a huge factor going into game 6 because I'll say it here. Minnesota, I think when it comes to losing these large leads, I think it's in their heads because they just can't handle these massive runs that Memphis goes on. I mean, for God's sakes, I think it was in game 3. Minnesota gave up like a 50-16 run when Minnesota had a plus 20-point lead. Like, you already had that happen once earlier in the series. And then you have kind of a similar situation take place in game 5, where you're giving up a double-digit lead on the road in a pivotal game 5. That is devastating. Now, I do think that Minnesota can win this game 6. I do believe that Minnesota, despite the fact that they are a 7th seed, they've shown me enough that they could go toe-to-toe and win some games against the Grizzlies. But until that they could prove that they could actually hold a sizable lead and stave off whatever sort of comeback that Memphis can come up with, I'm just not really favoring them to win this game 6. I just don't think that they're going to be able to get over the fact that they got some large leads taken away from them because they just couldn't knock down shots, and Memphis took advantage of it. So I think when it's all said and done, I think Memphis advances. I think they win this one in a relatively close fashion, probably like a 5 or 6 point game when it's all said and done. And I just like what Memphis has as a unit compared to Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards being able to basically put the entire team on their back and hope for the best. So I just like what Memphis has as a unit more than what Minnesota has with really 2 players. And I think when it's all said and done, Memphis goes on to the second round. That's just how I see it.